This hilarious incident took place just last week, and it still brings a smile to my face whenever I recall it. Allow me to share this anecdote, and I assure you it's well worth the read. To give you some context, I work as a warehouse manager for a company specializing in flood and fire damage repairs. Our services are in high demand, as numerous hospitals within a 500-mile radius rely on us. In order to efficiently serve our clients, I oversee a team of about a dozen crews who obtain their necessary supplies from my warehouse. They usually provide me with their orders in advance, allowing me ample time to prepare before their arrival. Now, let's talk about the main character in this story, who I've affectionately nicknamed Angry Andy. Among all the crew foremen, he is, without a doubt, the most challenging to work with. Unlike the others who give me a few days' notice, Angry Andy tends to give me a mere hour to gather his order, and, predictably, he becomes furious when I don't have it ready in time. You can imagine the stark contrast in our working relationship. Fast forward to last Wednesday, and Angry Andy bursts into the warehouse, shouting angrily as if the world were ending. Initially, I was genuinely concerned, assuming there might be a fire or some other calamity. However, it turned out he was just in one of his notorious fits of rage. He stormed upstairs to confront the company owner, knocking over a few boxes along the way. Curiosity got the better of me, so I followed suit and joined them upstairs. To my disbelief, Angry Andy began berating the owner, blaming me for breaking our flood truck. This particular vehicle is essential for emergency flood response, and sometimes the crews need it in the middle of the night. It was a baseless accusation, and I stood there dumbfounded as he hurled expletives in my direction. Uncharacteristically, I don't enjoy confrontations, so I decided to investigate the situation myself. Upon inspecting the truck, I discovered that it was in perfect working condition. Angry Andy had accidentally turned off the alternator switch, causing the battery to drain. Understandably, this mishap resulted in the truck abruptly losing power during its journey, which undoubtedly fueled his already boiling anger. Realizing the issue, I promptly rectified it and made my way back to apologize to both Angry Andy and the owner. Although the blame lay squarely on Angry Andy's shoulders, I chose not to confront him about it. Dealing with his explosive reaction was not something I desired, so I decided to shoulder the responsibility myself and defuse the situation. That concludes the first part of the story. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Let me know if there's anything specific you'd like me to focus on or if you have any further instructions. Now, for the satisfying revenge part. From time to time, the foremen make mistakes when marking down items on the pull sheets for their orders. Normally, it's not a major issue as I can usually catch and correct the errors before they become problematic. However, on that fateful Friday, Angry Andy submitted a pull ticket for a weekend job at a hospital located 6 hours away. He had specified that he needed 2 specialty scraper blades for a particular machine. Unfortunately, he mistakenly marked down the blades meant for a different machine. While I could have easily rectified the error, I didn't feel inclined to do him any favors this time. Instead, I decided to fulfill the order exactly as it was written. Consequently, on Saturday morning, Angry Andy drove the arduous 6-hour journey to the job site, only to discover upon unloading the order that he had received the wrong blades. Frustrated and furious, he called me around noon, screaming about the incorrect blades. Maintaining my composure, I calmly sent him a photo of his pull sheet, and he fell silent when he realized the mistake was entirely his own. The scraper blades were crucial for their work on the job, so he had no choice but to get back in his truck and drive all the way back to our warehouse for the correct blades. When he was roughly halfway back, I called him to inquire if he remembered to bring back the other blades. It was his responsibility to return them since he had originally pulled them. To his dismay, he had forgotten, forcing him to drive an additional 3 hours to retrieve the right blades, then return to the warehouse to make the switch, and finally embark on another 6-hour journey back to the job site. He ended up spending an extra 18 hours on the road, all due to his own mistake, and that's not even the most delightful part of the story. The truly satisfying part is that their productivity suffered greatly since they didn't have the correct blades. As a result, they now have to work again the following weekend to finish the job. This upcoming weekend was initially meant to be Angry Andy's crew's well-deserved time off, as every crew is entitled to one free weekend every 2 months. Unsurprisingly, his crew members are furious with him for the additional workload, and the company owner is seething due to the incurred expenses. I've heard from a reliable source that a significant portion of Angry Andy's pay will be deducted as a consequence. While he won't lose his job, his reputation has taken a hit, and now he's despised and regarded as a fool by everyone. Perhaps in the future he will remember to mark his orders correctly. What goes around comes around indeed. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to refine or any specific areas you'd like me to focus on. I am a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around on my trade, as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I have had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I am working in that area in the future. But this particular landlord got my back up so badly, I was not just going to just walk away. I had managed to get myself onto a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium. So I decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I know I was going to be working on it for a while, and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and met with him later that day. He seemed okay. I went to view the house, paid him the deposit cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended up staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems, always had the rent paid into his bank account on time, and fixed any small problems that might crop with the house myself without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, I only ever spoke to him twice on the phone after there was an issue with the heating that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer round the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went round to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month and to let him know that I was happy for him to come round to inspect the house before I moved out so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned the keys. He never came around while I was in to inspect the house, and so I assumed that he had come round and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So, on the day I moved out, I went around the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit?" "The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit," I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done on the house, it was in a better state now than when I have moved into it. His response was to step forward and get right up into my face and say, "You're not getting it back, so get lost," and he then gave me a shove, which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling on my back. Now, I am what you would class as an average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height. Wise and obviously spent some time down the gym, and the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us that the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So, without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this jerk quickly and painfully. After the first step, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue, so I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, said okay bye to my now ex-landlord, and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had had a spare back door key cut when I had lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the keys, so I could still get back in. So later that evening, I let myself back in and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, architrave, and floorboards, being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood flooring and carpets. I then left everything in nice, neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive when I decided I wanted to rub a little more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails, and box of wood screws out of the back of my van and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best, so I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and told her to tell her boss you will be needing these and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat in a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages which left me chuckling to myself. I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're funny leaving me nails and screws?" I responded yes, and with that, I went on to my next job. This incident took place in 2014 during my time in grad school. I landed a job at an office within my department that was responsible for procuring and managing testing supplies. Initially starting from the bottom, I had an eagerness to learn and grow. By my second year in the program, I had worked my way up to the position of manager and was even granted a raise of 75 cents. Hooray! The tasks assigned to me were not overly challenging. I mainly handled requests from professors, obtained price quotes from suppliers, got them approved, and placed orders. While there were other responsibilities, that was the extent of the more demanding tasks I encountered. Occasionally, I had to deal with our ordering department when they made mistakes with an order. I took the initiative to reorganize the office for greater efficiency and implemented new systems to address any issues that arose. For several years, I practically ran the office, and for the most part, it ran smoothly. During that period, we hired several new employees, but my boss disregarded my recommendations when it came to selecting candidates. In my fourth year of the program, one of the program heads asked me to order some test kits. I discovered that these kits could be ordered as a combo, which would save space but incur a slightly higher cost. Considering our space constraints, I believed it was a worthwhile choice. After obtaining the price quote and receiving approval from both the program head and department head, I proceeded to place the order. When the kits arrived, the program head was delighted with the combined kits and thought they were fantastic. Several weeks later, my boss approached me and reprimanded me for ordering the combined kits. She claimed that it had completely depleted the program's budget and that the program head would never have approved the order if she had known. Fortunately, I had kept the emails showcasing my communication of the price quote, including both the price per unit and the total cost, as well as the program head's approval. My boss was taken aback by the revelation that the program head had lied but still insisted that I take the blame. She gave me an ultimatum: accept a demotion or quit. I believe she expected me to choose the demotion, but I surprised her by deciding to quit instead. The joke was on her because none of the other employees were willing to shoulder much responsibility, and they had all refused training in the ordering process. The program became a laughingstock as it spiraled into chaos for months following my departure. My boss, who already had numerous other responsibilities, struggled to navigate the ordering system and manage the various other tasks that I used to handle single-handedly.